Woosa, wake up South Africa. You've been sleeping far too long. Wake up South Africa.
Hey, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for joining us today in our Sunday morning inspiration. Thank you, Prabhu, for joining us. Hare Krishna, over to you.
Hare Krishna. I'll start with a very short Mangalacharan because there's one verse that I'm trying to learn. So now is a good opportunity. Nama Shreshtam Manumapi Sachi Putram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasya Grajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhava Saram Prapto Yasya Patipata Kripaye Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tarale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo 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 Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschati Deshitarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So before I begin, I just like to offer my respects to my beloved spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada and all of our Guru Bhagya, as well as all the devotees here that have so kindly allowed me to come and speak something. I just want to give a little, disclosure that sometimes my internet is a little bit not so good. I'm on the Wi-Fi right now, but if something happens, if you can't hear me, or just let me know, I can like jump on my phone. So I was hoping for this session, instead of me just speaking, I wanted to get a little bit of feedback from devotees. Also because this topic that I'm speaking, Burger King spirituality, I want to hear from the people, their thoughts. What is this? Are we allowed to have some kind of interaction with the people here, or should I just rattle on? Because so my question is to whoever is here, if you're brave enough to speak up, what is it that comes to your mind when you hear Burger King spirituality? Like, what is this? What are we talking about? Why this subject? And maybe it's obvious to some, but maybe it's not. Does anybody have an answer? Prahlad, Namusa.
Fast food, quick fix.
Fast. Yes. Okay. So the reason that this topic came up was because I've been doing research lately for my online service. I do online service for ISKCON. We have a project called Chant Now, which is similar to WUSA, basically trying to encourage people to raise their consciousness through, especially taking on board the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And when I first came on this project, one of the first, it's been almost 2 years now, but the way that it was presented to me, the way that we this part of ISKCON Online is trying to present itself to the public is spiritual but not religious. So recently I was doing some research into some different articles and things about this concept of being spiritual but not religious, which is very popular. If anyone has been going on Sankirtan or like distributing books or in the universities, especially amongst like young people, millennials, it's very kind of trendy to be spiritual but not religious. So in one of the articles that I was reading recently, it came up with this topic, this phrase came up, Burger King spirituality, which is basically come as you are, you know. And it could have been anything, Burger King, Subway, McDonald's, whatever, but this was the term. Burger King. Because basically with fast food, it's like, you rock up, you have a menu, there's so many different things available depending on the mood that you're in, how you feel, what you ate that day. You pick something, or maybe depending on who you're with, you pick something from the menu. And these days, if you want to extend the analogy a little bit further, these days, you don't even have to get out of your car. You can just sit in your car, you can just drive up, order from the menu, and then you just drive a little bit more and they give it to you like this. So Burger King spirituality, it's basically making fun of people who are spiritual but not religious. So in this speaking that we're doing today, I want to start off by definitely having a dig, having a go, like making fun of this being spiritual but not religious. But then I also want to sympathize with them and kind of show both sides of why is it that people do go away from religion. And there's also a very nice kind of hard to read article of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, who also was kind of condoning organized religion as a what's the word that he used, like a necessity, but one that we don't want. But and then I want to conclude by kind of pointing out that actually the goal of the Gaudiya Vaishnav philosophy is actually to be spiritual but not religious. And if the speaking flows nicely and we get to this stage, depending on how this talk goes, we'll get there. So I wanted to start by reading something which is from a part of this article. And if anybody wants the article, I can share it with them. But basically, it's a story, and I didn't put the names of the authors or anything because it's kind of irrelevant to our conversation. But basically, one of the people who contributed to this article, they said, organized religion inevitably degenerates into tussles over power, ego, and money. And then this lady, she told a parable, like a story to tell this point. She says that God and the devil, they were walking down a path, and then God spotted some very beautiful, sparkling, shiny thing on the side of the path, and he picked it up and he held it in his hand. He was like, look at this, it's the truth. And then the devil said, here, give it to me and I'll organize it for you. So when I first read this, it took me twice to figure it out, but then I got, he's talking about organized religion, like you take the truth and you organize it. The devil, he organizes it, and then you get organized religion. So what you see is people are able to spot the hypocrisy and the challenges what comes together when religion becomes organized and religion becomes kind of calculated. And what happens is you have a spiritual substance which we can call God, or the absolute truth. What happens is people get involved and they meddle with it, they interpret it, they play with it, they organize it, and what you get is an adulterated or impure kind of situation. And the result of this is we can see countless examples in the history of the world where atrocities have been committed in the name of religion. And I mean, it's going on constantly all the time to this day. I mean, we don't need to bombard you with examples, but just recently also I was reading about, we don't even need to speak about it. We all have imagination, the stories that we've heard. And even in the history, the recent history of the Hare Krishna movement, we also have examples of atrocities committed in the name of Krishna consciousness, or in the name of ISKCON, or in the name of our religious institution. So therefore, what you see is a backlash where people go away from the religion, and therefore this term Burger King spirituality would say, I don't need the religious side, I don't need the organization, I don't need the establishment, because it's like me and my relationship with God. So I want to kind of discuss and kind of digest the what I would say the dangers of this being spiritual but not religious. There's a quote from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also from the same article where he talked about, and I quote, regulation is necessary for controlling the inherent worldliness of the conditioning, unnecessary, not unnecessary, a necessary evil, that's what he said. But actually, religion plays a function in allowing conditioned souls to kind of rise above their conditioning. Religion in its purest form kind of gives conditioned souls the opportunity to come in contact with a process that brings them away from their conditioning. Like if you imagine like the same analogy with the Burger King, you go and you pick what you want. What happens is you, based on your own feelings and inspirations and whatever's going on inside, you're kind of making your own spirituality. And there's nothing there that can really necessarily, although not in every case, it's kind of unique, but there's nothing there to really pull you out of what we would say the conditioning of this material world. So that's the danger of being kind of spiritual but not religious. I heard another nice analogy. It's like, you know, religion, it's kind of like a map or a photograph. Like say you wanted to, you can imagine seeing like a picture of the ocean and seeing it's very beautiful, whatever, or like my brother-in-law, he was showing me some waterfall where they went swimming, whatever, it's so beautiful. But you can imagine that experience compared to actually being on the shore of the ocean, or actually being there in the waterfall, like having that experience. And this analogy was kind of given comparing like religion to actual spiritual experiences. Like in one sense, you know, religion in the kind of like organized material side of it experience. But at the same time, if you want to learn something about something, if you have a map, you have a picture, this can kind of give you like some guidance to go in the right direction. And that one leads me on to one of my next points, where in this same article, they were talking about how, you know, religion basically means, what did they say? Like following some, like subscribing yourself to the experiences of some religious leader. You know what I mean? They were saying like, oh, if you're following a religion, it means there's some leader, whether it be Christ or the Prophet Muhammad, or if it's you know, Srila Prabhupada, whatever, some extraordinary person, you're just like giving yourself to this person. You know, you're just like surrendering basically to their experience. And I was kind of digesting on this point, like as if this is somehow kind of like a bad thing, because you can imagine, say like someone really wanted to be like a doctor, or you know, but they want to treat people, they want to help people, but instead of like going to a school and following it, they kind of just like make up their own. They make up their own practice, they make up their own kind of like medicine. Will you trust it? Will you follow it? I'm not sure. Maybe if they're really good. But see, the thing is, when we have examples of genuine spiritual leaders or genuine spiritual, you know, personalities, they're the living proof. They're the living, like that actually this philosophy bears fruit. You can see the living person, you can see the living example of the tradition manifesting in front of you. And that's why when you have a tradition like the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, which is, you know, we have examples, so many saintly personalities in our own lives. What to speak of that? We have so many recent examples of such a unique line of spiritual teachers, from Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We have so many examples of how, you know, these personalities, they come and they say like, you know, our, what we're teaching, this is what we're teaching, and this is going to be the result, and we are the living proof. You know what I mean? And then we can give our hearts to these people, we can give our faith to these people, we can have conviction that yes, if I follow this, I'm going to be like this. And this is something that really inspired me on the path of bhakti, because sometimes in Krishna consciousness and in most spiritual traditions, just the universe that we live in itself is so, you know, kind of amazing. Some things take a lot of imagination to understand. But when I see like personalities like who are basically like, you know, from a material standard like Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition can give a lot of conviction in this path. So this point about, you shouldn't subscribe to some kind of spiritual leader and give your experience to him. This kind of leads into the conversation of Guru Tattva. So I just want to quickly recap, because I think maybe some people, they're joining a little bit late. Just what we spoke about so far was this Burger King spirituality, which is basically where, you turn up, there's a menu, you pick what you want, and you kind of make your own spiritual practice. And we were sympathizing with these people who were like spiritual but not religious. Why? Because we can see so many examples of hypocrisy, so many examples of deceit, and so many examples of spiritual institutions going away from what they actually supposed to represent. And in an article where I was quoting a little bit from, actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he mentions that organized religion as kind of an unnecessary evil. He talks about Kamsa, King Kamsa, who was, I'm sure we all know who's King Kamsa, but he represents like the empiricist, like the materialist at the head. And then he's trying to, wherever truth springs up, he's trying to like crush it through atheism. And Kamsa's agents is Putana, like we know the story of Putana, where she comes as kind of the most beautiful, like kind of heavenly maiden, and she goes and tries to kill Krishna. And she's like an agent of Kamsa. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's saying that Putana, she represents the kind of like pseudo spiritual false teacher who is misleading the people. So these kind of agents of empiricism, like atheistic kind of materialistic thought, and they're false teachers and false gurus. This is how the materialists, headed by Kamsa, is like clamping down on the absolute truth as it springs up. And this is how we got into this point of guru, because in the same article, Bhaktisiddhanta, he says that, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he's saying that the way that you know that the absolute truth is kind of emerged is that a teacher will come and he will like crush all these misconceptions. He will like remove all of these misconceptions. And we see this in the life. He's like Simha Guru, right? He's like ferociously removing misconceptions. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada and our own Srila Prabhupada also. He was very much establishing Nivisheshanyavad Paschati Deshakayana. He was removing these misconceptions very boldly, preaching out even against other religions who by lips, by words, they say they follow a particular tradition, but practically they don't. And there's so many examples there. Thou shalt not kill, but you're killing the animals like this. So these are all reasons for us to kind of, although we can appreciate this mood of being spiritual, but not religious, there are many good reasons why we should be religious. And I said this quote of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, that by associating with kind of religious conceptions, this allows you to be pulled from the kind of conditioning of the living soul. So I want to get into this point of guru. And I don't know if anyone is brave enough to speak something, but I wanted to hear from the audience. Why is it that this concept of guru comes in? Because, there's this quote, this person was saying, oh, if you're religious, it means you're just like following some religious leader. But see, guru is such a part of our tradition. So does anybody want to give some contribution to this conversation about, what is the role of guru? Why do we have guru, and why is guru stressed so much in our tradition?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hari Hari.
Dandavad pranams. Yes, Guru is important because he knows more than us, and he knows what's best for us. He has helped a lot of conditioned souls like my humble self through the spiritual journey. So actually the Vedic path is about following the great authorities. So that helps us to develop spiritually.
Well said. I see another hand up, and then I'll comment on this. Prihat Madanga is raising his hand.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
I think there's no question of not following somebody. because, like I say that, you know, if you're not following somebody, you're following your mind. And one who says he is his own guru has a fool for a disciple.
Yeah, I read this recently also.
Yes, but now you need somebody outside of your own internal subjective realm to be able to tell you this is wrong, this is right.
Yeah.
You need to be checked. And if you don't have that, essentially, you're in a very dangerous position because you don't have boundaries. You're like a child without rules.
Yeah.
So you need that. So Shastra is that, but you also need the person that can actually make it relevant to you also. And it's very easy to cheat yourself without such a person whom you trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice point, especially with this Shastra, because even when we read Shastra, depending on how we associate with the modes of material energy, we can even interpret Shastra through our own consciousness. Savi also got a hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. My contribution is that for mundane things like ABCs, 1, 2, 3, a teacher was needed, for driving, for cooking. So for the subtle and sublime science of spiritual life, then a teacher is even more necessary. So guru is one who has seen the truth. Someone saying, how has he seen the truth? Well, he's Tattvadashi. He's seen the absolute truth. He knows through the scripture what is the truth. And so we need those eyes to help us see.
Yeah. It's even like, if you wanna be any material skill, if you wanna be a mechanic, if you wanna learn how to fix cars. Okay, so I was addressing Prahlad's point. He's taken so much guidance. I mean, the guru, he has so much experience. He has so much guidance. He has so much like this, and even Brihad Mridangi, he made this really nice point about how if you're not following someone who's kind of above you, you're following your own mind. Anyway, we make so many mistakes, and okay, we can take responsibility for those mistakes and our challenges and our doubts, even without having like a guru. But at the same time, like we had said, it's a nice point. If we're having that person who's above us, he's able to kind of like pull us out of this kind of ignorant state. And my understanding of guru from philosophical point of view, and all these points are correct and all of them are valid, but Guru Tattva is a very complicated kind of thing that I'm not going to pretend that I understand fully. But my understanding also is that, we understand we can break down the unlimited absolute Krishna into three energies. Obviously, his energies are unlimited, but three kind of primary energies. There's the Antaranga Shakti, which is the spiritual energy, the spiritual world. There's the Tatashta Shakti, which is kind of the intermediate. Tata in Sanskrit refers to the border of the material. No, sorry. Tata means the kind of concept where the land and the water meet on the bank of a river. The Tata is this like place where land and water meet, and it's neither land, it's neither water, and neither is it really a geographical kind of point that you can, more of a conception. So the Tata, the Tatashta, is the marginal energy made up of the living being, and then the Bahiranga, the external energy, is of course the material world. So Krishna, he's always in touch with the spiritual energy. He actually doesn't interact with the material energy, and without going into a tangent. When Krishna glances at the material energy and impregnates the material energy with the living entities, that glance is Shambhu, which we can understand is like Lord Shiva, is kind of like God that interacts with the material energy. But Krishna, God, Supreme Lord, he never actually interacts with the material energy. So therefore, what happens to us? We're all here, fallen conditioned souls in the material world, in material bodies doing material things. There's no, okay, the soul is detached, so therefore, like, how do you say, we have this potential. Kriti sadhya bhavat sadhya bhavta siddhinabha nitya siddhyasya bhavasya prakatam kriti sadhita. We have this potential within all of us for bhakti. However,
in all around us in the material world, Bhakti is not there. Krishna is not there directly. Obviously, he's there in the form of his energy. He's one with his energy, whatever. But what happens is, because Krishna is in the spiritual world, the guru acts as the medium, which connects the kind of fallen conditioned jiva to the spiritual energy, because we understand Bhakti resides in the heart of the Bhakti. Bhakti is there in the heart of the devotees. So these devotees, they're here roaming around in the mature world. What happens is they're coming in contact with the fallen conditioned souls, which is igniting Bhakti in their heart, which is planting these seeds, the Bhakti Lata beach, and giving Sadhu Sangha the seed of faith, Shraddha. The Guru is acting as this like connection between Krishna and the living entity. So it's actually essential. Without Guru, it's practically impossible. How will you come in contact with the spiritual energy? How will you come in contact with that Swarup Shakti of the Lord? We need Guru. So Guru plays a very important role, and therefore, although we can appreciate the reasons that people are spiritual but not religious, if you want to say that having a guru means you're a part of a religion, then it's absolutely essential that we become religious in order for us to connect with the spiritual energy, at least according to the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Now, when it comes to this point of being religious, I want to kind of, how to say, like glorify our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy as such a wonderful kind of religion to pick. You can say that we picked religion. Like so many different traditions out there, but Bhakti is so wonderful and all-encompassing and attractive and kind and merciful and wonderful. It just so happens to kind of be the religion for this age, because it's all-encompassing. All the people that are spiritual but not religious, all the people that are religious, and then all the yogis and the aspiring devotees, everyone is, how to say, contained within the Bhakti tradition. I just checked the time. So there's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11. Varanti tat tat vavidas tad brahmya jnanam advayam brahmatmi paramatmati bhagavan iti shabdate. So this is early on in Bhagavatam, establishing the one absolute truth in three aspects of the one absolute truth. God in three features. So we have Brahman, which is kind of, as far, usually we say that the jnanis, the people who are kind of not this, through your kind of cultivation of knowledge, jnana, through your, I don't know if you can say intellect, but through the process of jnana, you usually come to the stage of Brahman realization, which in my understanding, basically Brahman is as far as you can go on your own, basically. Not that Mayavadis and Brahmavadis don't follow the Vedic system of having a guru, but most of the people who are spiritual but not religious, or at least in the New Age sense, most of the New Age religions or spiritual practices, or basically people who are spiritual, they come to this stage of Brahman. I am you, you are me, we're all one consciousness, experiencing ourselves subjectively, but actually ultimately we're all one. And this is kind of a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people who take different catalysts or have, different medicinal, psychedelic experiences, they usually come to these kind of conclusions because it's a fact. We are all Brahman. There's a Tattvam Asi, that I am that we are Brahman. But there's one very beautiful, brilliant God brother, Srila Prabhupada, who I remember reading, he translated that Tat Tvamasi is not that I am that. He translated for the Vaishnavas, Tat Tvamasi means Tat Tvamasi, I am yours, Krishna. I am yours. It's kind of beautiful. That not that we are all one Brahman, right? Not that we're all Brahman, but that we are yours, Krishna. We are your servant. We are yours. So, but the Brahman conception is contained within the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition and the Vedic conception. It's like, yes, okay, there's a space for you to be spiritual and be with Brahman. And then the next kind of stage of realization, we have Paramatma. And Paramatma, it's basically, in my understanding, is Paramatma kind of the witnesser, and he's like sanctioning everything and giving everyone the reactions. So Paramatma is essentially like God of the material world. We see that Mahavishnu, he's lying down. From the pores of his skin come all the different universes, and then he enters into each of the universes, Shirodakshaya Vishnu, and then he expands as the super soul in each and every atom, in everything, between the atoms, everything, the super soul is there. So basically, Paramatma is God of the material world. Why? Because he's giving reactions, he's witnessing everything, he's sanctioning everything. And my kind of understanding or processing is that this Paramatma is what you see in the kind of traditional Abrahamic traditions. The God that they worship is Paramatma, because this Lord is witnessing everything. He's sanctioning, condemning, allowing this and that. So what you see is these kind of more recent religions that have sprung up. Kind of, I was reading in the last chapter of Adi Lila yesterday. Prabhupada is talking about the religion of the Yavanas, which is saying are not eternal. They are they began in Kali Yuga, and their origins can be traced. Whereas the Vedic tradition, it's an eternal religion. There's no origin ever existing. But basically, he was talking about there's three main religions. It's the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition, and the Muslim tradition. And obviously, the three of them are all connected. Because anyway, that's another conversation. But in my understanding, Paramatma is essentially the god of these religions. Their conception of God comes to Paramatma. Although I think you'll find that many of I haven't read so extensively, but I've read a few things. A lot of the experiences that we see kind of Christian saints having, it's usually quite impersonal. The light of the Lord and this and that. It is kind of impersonal in some sense. But then the Bhakti tradition, Gaudiya Vaishnava conception, takes you to the stage of Bhagavan, which is now you have God the person. And depending on the way that we approach God the person, the way that we have a relationship with the Lord, he manifests in different ways, which for those coming in the line of Srila Prabhupada and especially Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya, culminates in the relationship with Brajendananda and Shyam Sundar in Vrindavan, and service to Radha Krishna in Vrindavan, which I would want to say is basically the highest theological conception available. So I want to pause there and just recap a little bit that this conversation started because we were kind of making fun of just, rolling up in your car, drive through, picking what you want, depending on your mood. You don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to do anything, and you can still be spiritual. But then we established how even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he's also warning about the dangers of organized religion, you can say, like the dangers of religion in this world. And he talked about Kamsa, the empiricist, and his agent Putna, the kind of false spiritual teacher, and how this is so detrimental to the living entity. And there's so many nice points that I'm kind of remembering, like even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's talking about how many people, they use religion, like organized religion, as a way to just kind of cheat, in the sense they themselves, says the most like successful way for atheism to propagate itself in the world is under the label of the guise of theism. And he said many people, they come to like religious institutions with no intention of like service to God. They have some agenda, whether it's subtle or gross, but they have some agenda, and therefore in the world you see propagated like atheism and materialism under the banner of religion, and even like prominent religious institutions. And you get people, at least the Putinas of the world, who kind of really take over. But then we establish how the the truth manifests through the pure devotee who comes and kind of uproots, like you can say, cuts the forest of these misconceptions, and we have practical experiences of that in our lives. With especially, Bhaktivinoda Thakur reestablished the authority of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, and then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Srila Prabhupada, they very boldly preached the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition as the kind of Jaiva Dharma, you can say, is the religion for all humans. And then we spoke a bit about like guru and the role of guru and why guru is important, and how, in that sense, we have to be religious. We have to be connected to a personality who then is able to connect us to the divine, and the divine itself manifests in three ways, which then anyone who's spiritual and anyone who's religious is then capsulated within this, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, which is very beautiful, because I'm trying to glorify how the Gaudiya conception is so wonderful, that the Gaudiya conception, it encapsulates everyone. There's space for everyone within the Gaudiya tradition. And then in the last few minutes, I want to establish how, okay, yes, we a little bit made fun of being spiritual but not religious, because, I mentioned that for my online work, we try, the instructions that I've been given. We should be spiritual, not religious. We want to attract people who are spiritual, not religious. But the difficulties that I found with this is that when we who have the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and being, Hare Krishnas, when we try to present ourselves as spiritual but not religious, you kind of get a disconnect, where these people who are spiritual but not religious very quickly realize, but hey, these people are super religious. Why are we super religious? Because we have rules and regulations. We have, like consistent, sadhana that we do. We have like even cultural elements to kind of support our practice. We wear tilak, and that's not to say that there's not space for individuality in Krishna consciousness. And that's not to say that someone who isn't strictly following the regular principles is then disqualified from participating in Krishna consciousness. That's not the point. But the point is, like, Krishna consciousness is very religious. If you want to be kind of straightforward and honest about it, it's very religious. But why? Because we understand that this is an opportunity, this kind of practice and relationships, and even giving space for individuality, giving space for self-expression and whatever. But there is a process that's being mapped out, if we want to be religious, by God Himself, like Krishna Himself and the acharyas. They're giving the path by which we can, kind of pull ourselves out of the material world and associate with the spiritual and ultimately perfect our lives. And that is religious. But then I want to kind of synthesize, or how to say, actually make the claim before I finish, that actually the goal of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy is to be spiritual and not religious. And why is that? That's because Lord Chaitanya, he came for two reasons. Well, more than two, but Prem Ras Nir Se Korite Ashradan, Rag Mag Bhakti Lok Korite Bachan, Rasika Shekara Krishna Parama Kurun, E Dui Hita Hita Ichma Utran, Icha, the Icha, I'm a Icha Kori, I have a desire. So Lord Chaitanya's Icha, his desire, was to taste Prem Ras and to distribute Prem Ras, which is called Rag Mag. So the Gaudiya Siddhanta brings us to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, which is spontaneous, loving, devotional service as the essence of Krishna consciousness. And we understand that, okay, there's two paths. There's the Vaidhi Marg and then there's the Rag Marg. Vaidhi Marg is basically, how to say, governed by rules and regulations. And the kind of main factor there is fear, actually. Oh, if I don't, and this is why many people hate religion, the fear God. Or if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. It's kind of rules and regulations. And it's not that these rules and regulations are then thrown out at some stage, but actually this is like the foundation on which you come to the platform of rag. And rag is kind of symptomized by a spontaneous natural attraction of the soul towards service to God. It's no longer religious, it's just who you are. And that's the essence of the Gaudiya Siddhanta, to become spiritual and not religious. And there's a few examples that come to my mind in Shastra. The first one, of examples of people who were not kind of, I don't know if you can say strictly following, but Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who's the spiritual master of Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit is Srimati Radharani in Braj Leela, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi is her father, Vishwapanu Maharaj. And anyway, when Gadadhar Pandit comes and sees him the first time, he's like thinking he's a total materialist, you know what I mean? And even, he's doing all kinds of things. But then when hears the verse of the Bhagavatam, he immediately goes into this kind of ecstatic, spontaneous, natural attraction to Lord Krishna in Vrindavan. The reason that I bring it up is because, yes, we are religious, but at some stage also, religion is not the kind of end in all. The end in all is your soul having a relationship with God. And for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, that means obviously we are Rupanugas. We love the Goswamis, the 6 Goswamis and Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya, and we aspire to remain in that association. But these personalities have then pointed us in the direction of Vrindavan. And for us, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, that means serving the divine couple in Braj. And that is the essence of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta, on the platform of spontaneous, loving devotional service, spiritual service, not religious. So I will conclude. I think we have like 13 minutes. Thank you all for hearing what I had to say. I had a lot of things in my head. I wasn't sure how it was all going to come out, but it was some nice points there, and I hope that you got some benefit. And if anybody wants to contribute or clarify or speak more, we can. Just before we get there, you can all start activating your brain. I want to do a little promotion. Forgive me, I didn't ask permission, but we have a project as a part of ISKCON Online called Chant Now, and I can post the website in here. But basically, we have a nice team, dedicated team, as well as volunteers. And for anyone who's out there who's interested, if you're like kind of new to Krishna consciousness, we have courses and things that we offer, but we also establishing an online community. And also for those devotees out there who want to kind of get involved in terms of, we can create facilities for you to give classes, to write articles and things like this. And we've just spent the last kind of 5 months building a new website and rebranding and everything. And I would love to, I can post in the chat, share this kind of information with you all, that you can take a look. And then anybody who's kind of interested in being involved or want to know more, you can please get in touch with me. I'll leave my details in this chat. And we always want more help, and I'm very optimistic that this project is going in a nice way, and we can work together to attract people who are spiritual but not religious to our religious, which is ultimately not religious but spiritual. So I'll finish with that, and yeah, let me know if there's any questions or comments or whatever.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was a really, really nice class. And yes, please leave any of your links or information on the chat box so we can just copy it and take a look. So yes, please leave it in the chat box for all of us. Yeah, so I do see a hand up, and before, there's also some messages that I'll go through first from Bafana Prabhu that sent a while back, talking about when we were speaking about the Guru. He said, Guru is representative of God, and, hold on, I can't see now. Guru is representative of God, there can only be one, example, Srila Prabhupada. So he has nothing of his own, he uses all his intelligence to the service of the Lord.
How do I see the comment?
Yeah, I'm trying to, sorry.
Can you read it again?
I will. My laptop is just really small, so I have to try change my view so I can see it again. Just one moment. Okay, this will be better now. Okay, so Guru is representative of God, and there can only be one. For example, Srila Prabhupada. So he has nothing of his own. He uses all his intelligence to the service of the Lord. He is self-realized. He speaks from authority, not dogma. So that was just a comment. And yeah, we have 3 hands up.
Clarify this. There can only be one. I mean, not quite correct. Any gurus? There's Bhatma Pradakta Guru, there's a Shiksha Guru, there's Mantra, Nam Guru, Diksha Guru, many gurus. You can have one Diksha Guru, but you can have many Shiksha Gurus. Like this. So just to clarify that point. I mean, there's like, even in Bhagavatam, it's saying like, there's this part, I forget, it's in 11th canto, where someone is seeing Guru in so many things, like they're seeing the python and the bee and all kinds of things they're taking as Guru, because they're able to understand that this principle is acting in this situation. Like Guru is that which takes us to Krishna, helps us advance spiritually. Like sometimes you may have had this experience, I know I've had this experience where someone's talking to you, maybe even be your wife or maybe your father-in-law or your whatever, you know, or even some situation like something happens and there's a lesson that you advance in your consciousness, that you go closer to Krishna. This is the principle of Guru manifest. And there's a beautiful, beautiful article, not an article, it was a speech given by Srila Prabhupada on the Vyas Puja of his spiritual master, Bhakti Saraswati, like, gosh, I don't know, in the 60s, not even 60s, like in the 30s or something. I can find it in my Kindle. He's talking about, yeah, Guru is one, but actually, you know, this one principle of Guru can manifest in many different situations and many different personalities. And that's why we understand, it's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita that, I'm sorry, I'll be quiet after this. But it's like, Krishna is saying that to Uddhav, I believe, he's saying like the Diksha Guru is like his Swarup, and the Shiksha Guru is like his Rup, something like this. You know, basically, they're one and the same. So yes, it's true. We don't deny the personality of the spiritual master. We have the Guru, and he's a person, and we respect the personality. We honor the personality, and we honor everything in relationship to the person. But ultimately, Adi Guru is Balaram, Nityananda, is the original spiritual master. Why? Because Krishna expands into Balaram, then Balaram expands into all the paraphernalia for worshipping Krishna. Means Vrindavan, all the bodies of the Brajbasis, the paraphernalia. That's why Mridanga is Balaram. Everything, whatever we use for worshipping Krishna is Balaram. So Balaram is the original Guru, Nityananda is the original Guru, because he's the original facilitator of service to Krishna. So anyone who facilitates us serving Krishna is a spiritual master. And that can be like, you know, you see the bee is like going and taking nectar from the flower, where the fly is like going and sitting on stool. So, oh, this bee is teaching me I should look for the good, I should not go to the bad. Therefore, this bee is my Guru. There's examples like this in Shastra. That the principle of Guru can guide you in anything, everything. You can see Guru everywhere, same way you can see Krishna everywhere. And that's obviously a kind of high stage of one. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Prabhu. And yeah, so Bafana then he comments again after your reply, says the point that he's, of course, the point I'm making is that all others are taking from Prabhupada. They would not be in all the other gurus if not for Srila Prabhupada.
Well, in ISKCON, yeah. Well.
Yeah. And yeah, so we have some hands up. I think Savya Sachi Prabhu was first. If he can unmute himself.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Very wonderful topic. And it's true, this religious but not spiritual is a common mantra for people. Or spiritual, not religious, the other way around. I just wanted to highlight, I think, when we meet such persons, to ask them, you know, what's your concept of being religious? and also, what's your concept of being spiritual? I think this helps us sometimes to avoid where there's no disagreement. It's just that the definition of terms maybe is not understood. Sometimes people are meaning the same thing, but they define things differently. Yeah, generally I find people, when they think of spirituality, that, where you are getting more wholesome, more peaceful, you are all embracing, you're welcoming, and they may think that religion means, holier than thou, you're controlled, you're just a mouthpiece for some religious book or guru, and so they want sort of that oneness. Yeah, I find when we do that, we clarify terms. Sometimes we avoid a long discussion and we come to what you were referring to at the end, that actually in Krishna consciousness, both exist. And I just wanted to cap it off with just pointing out how also this thing of spiritual experiences, that every soul being spiritual can have a spiritual experience. Different people have them in different settings. Sometimes as devotees, we may think that only when people practice how we practice, only then can they have a spiritual experience. But allegorically, maybe if we could say spiritual experience would be like seeing some beautiful scenery at the top of some mountain, sometimes people can have a glimpse of what's available at the top of the mountain, but they may still be at the bottom of the mountain. And so there's that spiritual experience. Then there's the spiritual consciousness, which is what we are aiming for, to always be seeing everything in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then also there's the process from not just here and there having spiritual experiences, but coming to the spiritual consciousness. And I find that religion is actually in that space of process, that there are things that have to be done to keep one in spiritual consciousness or to regularly visit spiritual consciousness. And yeah, it's a very interesting topic. And thank you very much for presenting it.
That's the point that Bhakti Siddhanta was making. He's saying, and I read it before in a class, where regulation is necessary for controlling the inherent worldliness of the conditioned soul. That it's necessary. We need it if we want this to attain this consciousness, we need what we call sadhana. Yeah, very interesting.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Prabhu. So then we have Madanga Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I liked the points you're making about when one claims to be spiritual but not religious. And you mentioned like New Age, right? That's kind of one of the, I would say, the ends of that kind of path. And what New Age really is, when I was raised as a Christian, I remember some pastors and stuff saying, be careful of New Age, it's very dangerous. And I was thinking, why is it dangerous, But now, I really understand it, because it is actually full-blown Mayavadism. And as, our mood is coming from Lord Chaitanya, I think that was the one thing that he really said is the most dangerous, is to associate with these ideas. And maybe you can mention something about why is that so dangerous, to even hear or consider like these types of points, let alone let it enter into your heart. Like, what is the big deal?
It's very interesting. It's also something that I think about a lot, especially the last point that you made about the instructions of Lord Chaitanya, that we shouldn't associate, we shouldn't hear, it's very dangerous. Like, I'll give an example. We were in a program, we were making kirtan and stuff, and there was one boy who was clearly not a part of, like, he was obviously not a Hare Krishna culturally or anything, but he was chanting. And I was so attracted to this boy, and after the program, like no one was speaking to him. I went up and I was speaking to him, and he told me like he just came, he likes kirtan, but he's like a part of, I don't know, something else, that he's a part of some other kind of spiritual path, which I assume was kind of Mayavad from the way that he was speaking. And then I was thinking, I want to go and I want to spend time with him. I want to get to know him. But he wants to introduce me to their guru and all this stuff. And I'm thinking like, I want to go. I want to know what's going on. So it's kind of like the danger is, you start to think that there's something other than the kind of Krishna conception, or that the Krishna conception is somehow a part of this other thing. Because the reason that the Gaudiya Vaishnav tradition is so adamantly against Mayavad is because we very strongly adhere to the idea that, like according to Jaiva Dharma, that Bhagavan, Krishna, has a medium-sized form. That's how it's described. I mean, at least that's how it's translated in English. He has a medium-sized form, which just happens to be eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. And from that medium-sized form comes the entire everything, including you and me and everything. And what the Mayavad conception does is it says that not only is the personality of Krishna Maya or illusion or temporary, but his body and everything. Basically, the Mayavad conception is that, there's like what we would call Brahman in the Vedic term, but basically the oneness or it or the source or whatever words you want to use. And then everything that happens in terms of the realm of like experience, this is all just like temporary, like transformations and permeations of this spiritual substance that ultimately goes back into this oneness. So for us, as it's like you're basically killing Krishna, or you're denying Krishna, you're denying Radharani, you're denying love, which is like the highest thing for us is bhakti, right? Like the exchange of love ultimately between Radha and Krishna, which we're supposed to facilitate. Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna. Like the jiva's function is to bring Radha and Krishna together. That's our whole existence is meant for facilitating that exchange of love and participating in that exchange of love. That being the highest thing. And then the Mayavad conception says this exchange of love is temporary, illusory, it's not real, it doesn't exist, it's just one. And that's why we hate it. And I think my understanding is Lord Chaitanya, he was against it because if you lose that, you've taken this away from Radha and Krishna, or you've lost this connection to this Radha and Krishna, this amazing, wonderful, captivating, most brilliant thing. You've kind of denied yourself of that. And just to conclude, I think the danger is that the Mayavad conception, it kind of sounds very attractive, or sometimes it can trigger something that makes us go like, oh, like, whoa, like, there's a part of us that's kind of like looking, maybe I'm just speaking kind of sentimentally or like from my imagination, but looking for that way to jump boat, like looking for that, like, yeah, actually, I am God, or like I knew like we're all one, or I knew, like there's a part, it can be attractive and disrailing and disleading from the path of bhakti. But I just wanted to say, because I was speaking about how I met this boy and I want to go and hang out with him. It's like, just because of we are a part of I guess you can say a religious system, although Sabi was also mentioning, like, how do you define religion? But because there are these warnings and instructions, it kind of makes you think like, oh, why is it dangerous? Why is it this and that? Like, no, I'm like a big devotee. I'm fixed up. There's no way I'm gonna like become a Mayavadi. But who knows? We don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe you can even contribute. I'm sure you have something more constructive to say than myself.
Thanks.
But,
That's so nice.
that's some thoughts that came in my head in relationship to what you were saying.
One thing which also came up for me is that Mayavadism is also a lot more skilled than that. So you might actually have a bhakta.
I hope my signal is not like a total mess.
You might actually
really feel what's going on.
So you might actually, you can see you're a bhakta, but somewhere along the line unknowingly you've allowed a single impersonalist thought to enter into your heart, and it's come in undetected. And what it does is it actually spoils your whole advancement, because there's like then a fundamental error, which then will prevent you from making a spiritual advancement. And you won't know why things are going wrong. And then to go back into your heart and to try and find that can be very, very difficult. I mean, even to detect that something like that is there is hard. What you speak of finding it, it's like you're baking like a cake, and a single splinter of glass falls in the batter undetected, and you bake this cake, and then afterwards you kind of realize, whoa, there's this splinter of glass in there. How am I going to find it? You know, there's this cake you want to relish, but there's this thing inside. You know, so it's kind of like that's why it's very dangerous. It's so subtle that it's even hard to even give an example of what it would be like. You know, because it affects your entire world paradigm. As you're saying, like, you know, we see things, everything Krishna-centered, but that might put just off center. So it looks like Krishna's in the center, but he's 1 millimeter to the right. So you don't perceive that actually he's not fully in the center anymore. And for us, that is a problem, you know, and it's very hard to perceive. And again, with a guru can actually cut you down, and he can correct that for you also. Like Prabhupada, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarinai. He's came to free us, because all of us are completely contaminated with this concept of impersonalism and voidism. Yeah, very dangerous.
If the lips of the serpent have touched the milk, you know, so the milk still looks all creamy and delicious. And then when you've drank it to your full satisfaction, and then you're surprised. Why am I feeling so different? Yeah, therefore, it's dangerous, because it sounds, it appeals also to our main anatta, which is we've rebelled against Krishna, wanting to be the Lord and Master and controller. And Mahava tends to distribute that amongst all of us, that no, I'm God, you are God, no, we're all one. You know, it's just some illusion has to be removed to understand that we are actually God. And you hear that a lot these days, you know, that people feel it's an advancement to recognize that you're God and you don't need to follow any other authorities except your own authority. Interesting. Jambavan, I saw you had a hand and I slid down. Maybe just give you a shot.
Yo, Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you?
Cool. Hare Krishna. Yo, Urugaya, Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Thank you so much for such an amazing, expression and class. I just wanted to say something on, there's a lot of background noise, mind that.
It's okay, no
Beautiful,
problem.
colorful sounds of Sasangule, you know, you can hear me proper, it's cool.
Yeah.
Something about a guru, what was it, about religion, spirituality, and the guru. I found that like a real practical example is that the guru, or whether Shiksha or Diksha, mostly Shiksha, has to have a type of intelligence in how to explain or say or attract or speak or preach about spiritual knowledge into religious what, because I've seen that it's better when the Shiksha guru displays a spiritual luring or like coming to this world, but themselves have principle enough to practice the religion, and then the person they're preaching to easily accepts the religious standards. Because what I've seen is that when it's vice versa, when it's just like super like religious, like boom in your face stamp, this is religion, da 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 da. The people that I've seen in my life who come into the space or whatever, like super religious, I only listen to kirtan, now today, somewhere, but the intelligence from the guru who like brings him in like in a spiritual world, but practices religiously principled, it's easy. You just like pick up, like, you know what? Maybe this ain't so bad. You know, that's just in another multiverse. I think things I've seen is like that. Yeah.
No, it's so good, and I really resonate with this point, and I wanted it to come up in the class, but it didn't really come out because it's very much in relationship to what you're saying, and I hope you can all see the connection that, you know, I have some friends too come to mind straight away, but there must be more, that they kind of feel like they're disqualified from Krishna consciousness because they're not able to like follow the religion. You know what I mean? They're not able to. They don't only listen to kirtan, they're listening to whatever, and they're not able to only do this and only do that. And then they disqualify themselves. So I think that's very dangerous, and I think that there's so much space for individuality within Krishna consciousness, and that Krishna is God with a heart. Our Guru Mantra always says like this, that there is space, you know, and like you said, you know, you come in like only kirtan, and then where are these people now? Like obviously for those people who is natural, who it's spiritual for them to only be like this and this, I think that's the standard, that's the aspiration. But then to disqualify yourself from the religion because you're not able to follow the religion, this is silly. There's no disqualification for bhakti. That's why I did want to say this, and that's why I talked about Pundarik Vidyanidhi, that there is no disqualification for bhakti. There's no impediments for bhakti. Bhakti is completely independent, and Krishna wants the heart, and Krishna wants the consciousness. However, the religion is there because this will help you, like Savio was saying, this consciousness that we're aspiring for.
Well, yes, thank you, everyone.